If it was a smaller class, and like it would be easier to focus and like work with the group to solve problems and see where people are getting stuck.
After a while, you start to realize that you matter in the classroom. You also need to think about what happens when you don't invest in smaller class language. And then you've got children that are forward to the class, children that
I think so. I don't. Maybe not. I know. You're telling me. I don't think so.
I think we're in March, but this week is the anniversary of Brock versus Board.
Oh, I don't. Okay.
With the teachers. But the teachers responded better because they didn't have an overwhelming number of children to deal with. Poverty's a terrible teacher. And it
Okay.
drains
That sounds good.
everyone.
Of course. A little tired.
It drains the
My
children.
morning got changed around. So.
But when they have that teacher and get that attention, it changes their lives.
So much evidence that children.
Thank you.
It's going to be on.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Hello. Thanks, man. Good.
We have a stable transition.
now sexual and there's no that's a right we have here in my life. So we need to support all this stuff. It was so hard to realize that there was help there because I just didn't see it. So I did end up signing up to get food stamps. And because I didn't know a group about address, I didn't do the application. I felt like they needed help, SNAP wasn't there.
So education becomes their education for your father, and they really have no knowledge. So one is the education piece, okay, here's what you're eligible for. And then two, help them access these services. I think that's the basic conception and not really these services, not really for change people.
I got someone since I was like 15 out of my mom, she's moved on. We were never talked about this system just because of my mom not wanting to be part of the program. Food stamps, when I grew up, they didn't really have a positive, people didn't really talk about doing food stamps a lot just because they showed they needed help from the government. So there's definitely some type of state class that was kept in myself because I couldn't do the program and I decided not to.
Daily is transportation ability and housing ability. When they don't have abilities, they don't have people that help them, they don't have friends that are house, they come wherever they go.
Experience that I actually make a home. And there's various reasons as to why I became homeless. In my situation, I wasn't living in a home that was safe. I couldn't apply for my living on my own because I never had credit, and there was a lot of learning when it comes to filling out these applications, when it comes to civil assistance program. Some people are so intimidated with the application process itself. Just the fact that they ask for so much paperwork, for example, like 2 weeks of pay stubs or something like a piece of mail that says your name and your address. People really need help everything out because the applications are very complex. Some issues, young adults is how they run around and get to their information. They transfer you to 50 different people somehow. So when you're trying to find information, it's not that easy to get. People get discouraged after hearing horror stories when it comes to dealing with SNAP, for example, or trying to get a Section 8 voucher, or trying to get housing assistance, and the way that people treat you. They don't want to go through that process, feeling like they are being ignored and being looked down upon, trying to access these resources.
A lot of you have trauma history, so when our agency or other agencies that work in previous agencies come in and say, hey, we put it up, we do this, I'm gonna go just run out of trusting because of their history.
We want these young people to have the best success that they have. In order to do that, we give them these safety net programs so people can get there.
That program, because they're young adults, making them feel like they're better to listen to them, communicate with them, not just making them feel like it's a job.
How are we making it go to where they're looking for? We're making sure we target places, you gotta go from here, and you'll see that information, so they know what they have available to them.
Meet young people where they are, meet them in your campuses, meet them in large corporations, because we're not looking for people who need help, who know there's help, and get the help. I would want other young people like myself, or younger than I am, to take the lead in terms of like, what are the changes that they want to see when it comes to these programs? What are resources and supports that we can put in place to make sure that people like that can apply to these programs and not feel intimidated? A lot of times young people don't think that they can actually talk to elected officials and they can actually advocate for the changes that they want to see. And so I think it's really important for people to really own their power when it comes to advocacy related things, to be confident in their voice and be confident in the solutions that they want to propose.
Start from the 8th level, you have to learn passionate that will work really hard, that will try to break down the walls that are going to have for good reasons that will run themselves, where they don't feel like anybody able to tell us what's really going on, we can best support them. They know more than we do, experts.
My ideas and my concerns matter. You can change things if you are able to speak up and just understand that you are not alone. If you just go around the room and we're trained how to effectively speak to local, state, and federal politicians, then we will be done. This is our rights. These are things that matter to us. There's not going to be many people who are really going to vouch for us if we don't say anything. If we don't say there's an issue, no one's going to think there's an issue.
We want to thank our partners at Young Invincibles, thank you specifically to Sean Miller, Yoshi Fong, and Lisa Nishimura. So we'll be joining us on the panel soon. They actually were approached by the organization Urban Institute to really center young people and interviewing young people. And so of course, we had to end our film series with young people, listening to them and honoring them, not just in their voices, but truly as the sun comes in, truly the sun that helps the seeds. I know we had a rainstorm earlier, we're bringing in the sun now, we're getting away, I see some laughing minds. There's a lot. Let's end it. And we may have so much for us. What? So, things to say behind the scenes. We also wanted to take a moment to thank our public advocate who has joined us for the film screening. And of course, as he works and fights for all of us, without further ado, public advocate Jimani Williams.
Thanks. This is amplified. Testing. Can you hear me? Oh. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Peace and blessings, love and light to everybody. Very honored to be here. I have some prepared remarks, but first, just the weight of where we are and where I'm standing next to is pretty heavy. A hero of mine, Malcolm X, 60 years, and we're still kind of fighting for many things that he was fighting for. 70 years of board versus the Board of Education, still hasn't achieved what we wanted. There's a lot of heaviness here, but I am heartened to see so many folks here still keeping the fight, still pushing forward to make sure we have equity in education. Education is the rule of everything. I'd be remiss if I didn't just shout out the memory of Bill Perkins, whom we lost and was fighting for these issues as well. And I had the honor as a young 20-something-year-old to go to Grenada with Dr. Betty Shabazz many years ago, which is my homeland. So this is a lot. But peace and blessing, love and light. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to Elizabeth Kennedy EK and her team for the amazing job putting this together, for making this happen. She's awesome when it comes to fighting for justice and equity in education every day. Thank you to everyone who helped put this together, Lupe, the entire staff. I really appreciate it, and everybody who participated. This event, I hope, will provide transparency and clarity and collaboration on a budget where the process is usually confusing, but the outcomes are clearly felt in our children's schools. I'm reminded of last year's budget, when a budget with deep cuts was passed without transparency or a real understanding of the impact. And of course, there were many fingers pointed. We don't need to rehash that, but we do need to make sure this year we don't repeat the same mistakes. We can't repeat the same patterns. We can't continue to demand more results while cutting the funding needed to achieve them. I remember commenting, I don't know, I'm a big Wire fan, but they're always telling people you have to do more with less. And one of the great quotes I remember is, no one does more with less, everybody does less with less. Our school needs two things right now: support and stability. We need to deeply invest in our education in order to secure both the immediate needs and long-term future of our city schools. What we can do is spend smarter. We can make sure that every dollar is going to clear goals, to programs with proven successes. Last year, my office released a report urging we budget for education and combat inequity through investment, not austerity. That philosophy should be at the center of our approach to education as we move forward in recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic that upended our schools, creating immense new challenges and exacerbating the old for students, teachers, parents, and school staff. If we return to the old practices rather than forging a new normal, we will have failed our students, not to mention the many, many lives that we lost. We need sustained investment of attention and resources to correct long-standing injustices and inadequacies and strengthen a school system that forms the foundation of our city. In this event, I know we're looking at where our dollars are going in schools and some ideas that we have: creating healthier school environments for students, healing center school and practices, equitably funding all our public schools, transitioning to healing center schools, supporting students with disabilities, ensuring every student feels safe at school, prioritizing students who are English teachers, English learners, and English teachers, implementing culturally responsive teaching in our schools, establishing an office for students in foster care, ending the digital divide, reducing class sizes, desegregating our schools 70 years after versus the Board of Education, streamlining and growing successful programs like summarizing the Student Academic Achievement Plan and the Academic Recovery Plan, transporting students safely and reliable to and from school, providing more professional experiences from recent high school and CUNY graduates, just to name a few ideas. And we have to invest in our teachers as well, who are constantly being asked to do more with less, who are working in the wake of an unprecedented time and trying to equip students whose lives and educational careers were forever shifted. We have to remember that no one, administrators and school staff, teachers and parents, students, are statistics. No one is just a budget line or a test score. We need to see and support the reality and humanity of what's happening in our schools. I see that humanity looking out of all of you today, and I'm grateful for your voices and efforts, which we need to carry out in this room, into our budget, and into our future. I am a public school baby from preschools to masters. I know it's a jewel that needs to be polished. What frustrates me the most is we have a change in administrations over and over, but we continue to have the same results. Whomever's there, we're getting the same results. And we seem to want to wrest our way out of the problems and not invest our way out of the problems. And that doesn't make sense. We know the school is the heart of the community. There's so much that we can do to work together to deal with many of the issues so that our students are safe in school and they're safe on the way to school and on the way to home and dealing with the many issues that they have to deal with. So I'm just gonna make sure I end with shouting out my 5th grade teacher, Miss Jeannie Ned, as I always try to. Miss Ned taught me that teachers are not babysitters, they're integral to students' lives. And every time they try to kick me out of school, Miss Ned took time out to say, not this young black boy. And I wish we had so many more Miss Neds. And I'm sure we do. But I'm worried that Miss Ned might be teaching to the test today if she was teaching, and that's a concern. And I always say my mother was annoyingly in my business, which is very helpful. And I feel now that parents are not as receptive, administration is not always as receptive to parents as they were when my mom was involved. So thank you all so much. Peace and blessings, love and light. Thank you for being here.
Thank you to our public advocate, Money Williams. I also want to say an incredible thank you to the incredible folks helping to make sure our event is more accessible. Thank you to Mike. Please thank yourself as well. And then we also want to thank Lisa, who is here with us in the front row. Thank you for being here to make sure that we have ASL. It's so important. We also wanted to thank Dana Lennon Thomas, who's in the back, a part of our Education and Opportunity team. As well as Lupe Hernandez, who's literally behind the scenes right now, helping to make sure that things move slowly. We want to thank Curtis, we want to thank Lorraine, we want to thank Gwen, who came here, as well as so many who've been here today on our team, Gina, John, as well as Emmett on our team. So we've all just watched many, many films from all across the country, as well as New York City. And we hope it gave you a trailer of insights, many things that we saw nodding heads around the room, things that we lived, things that we continue to live and experience. But really, we're next going to move into a panel. And our vision for this panel is really to provide a space for guided reflection and insights from incredible education stakeholders, movers and shakers from across the city, folks that you all know and you love. And we really hope for you to think of them as guides, right, in the room that may have some extra nuggets to share, some extra water, some extra sunshine to sprinkle on those seeds that are growing in all of us and making our education more just and equitable. We also wanted to give us a little bit of context, as many folks know, because I've seen you at rallies, you're organizing them yourselves, just that we are now in the city in the midst of a budget process to finalize our budget in the city by or before the end of June. Our legislators at the state just are finalizing and finalized the state budget almost 3 weeks late. And we know many of you were a part of that fight. We hope for you to be inspired, and we hope for you to learn more about the panelists, but as well as each other on your way in. And hopefully also now you have the one pager. It has a do now, bringing us back to the classroom, or many of us students in the room into the classroom here, hopefully in positive ways, and some questions to help us get to know each other. It also has a QR code, which you can take a photo of the panelists' bios, and it will lead you to a page to share bios and more about our incredible panelists. And so, without further ado, we are so grateful to our panelists today, starting with our incredible moderator, Marcus and Griffith, journalist of School Colors podcast, you may know and love. Also, founder of the Movement Colors. And before you turn it over to Marcus to introduce, if we could have our other panelists come on up and join us at the front, that we really are all over the panelists, and so we hope this just kicks us off. So without further ado, our panelists can come up and join us. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, good evening. You know I'm gonna have to ask you again, right? This is just a ritual we go through. Good evening. That's what's up. Good to see everyone here. My name is Mark Winston Griffith. Just a way of introduction, I'm mostly a Brooklynite. I am a former executive director of an organization called the Brooklyn Movement Center, and while there did, I would call it parent organizing, education advocacy, and then also I am the co-producer, co-host, co-creator of something called School Colors, which is a documentary podcast. We've got 2 seasons, one that is based in Southern Brooklyn, the other one in Queens. So it's my distinct pleasure to moderate this panel. I'm going to do my best to ground this conversation in the, we just saw these films, and the idea is to take a moment to ground what you saw on the screen in today's conversation, today's policy issues, today's budget, today's grappling with the most important educational issues, public education issues that of the day. So, with that, I'm hoping that folks got a chance to read some of the bios. Yes? Yeah? Okay. So we're not gonna struggle through every single bio. What I'm gonna do is ask for folks to sort of just say a little bit about themselves on their own. So, what I'm going to do here, what I'm gonna ask folks to do, and I know we don't have many mics, is I want us all to talk among one another. That is, I know folks are out there, and I want to resist the temptation to speak to folks there and speak among one another, and have folks be, in a sense, listening in on a conversation, right? So, at first, obviously, when I ask you to introduce yourselves, sure, focus to the audience, but after that, I'd like you to talk amongst yourselves, okay? Great. So, I thought this through. Yes, I need these glasses. So, everyone's had a chance to look at bios, hopefully, but I'm going to just work my way over and ask everyone to give us your name, your pronouns, tell us how you see your role in education justice today. What do you feel like you've been put on this earth to accomplish with regards to public education, individually and an organization? So that is, just take the opportunity to say your name, what you do in your organization, and really what's your role? What role do you see for yourself in public education conversations today? So I'm going to start with you, Melanie Rosas Reyes. Did I pronounce that correctly? All right, we'll start with you and we'll work our way across.
Hi, I'm Melanie. I use she, they pronouns. I work with Integrate NYC, a nonprofit.
take up?
Go for it. Lady Hinkson.
My name is Lan Kingston. I run an organization called Class Size Matters. I typically have 20 years of my life trying to make sure that New York City kids get the benefits of small classes, which, as we know, every single private school in the country gives their children so that they can have a real chance to have quality education and succeed. So I see my role as advocating for that, is giving people the information they need about the benefits of small classes and helping to advocate parents, teachers, and other concerned citizens who really care about the future of our city and the future of our country to push as hard as they can to make sure that someday soon our kids get those benefits as well.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone.
Is it on? Yeah, we're experiencing technical difficulties here.
I guess I could just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm small. Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Alright. I guess I'll start. Hi, my name is Lisa Nishimura. I use pronouns they, AJ, Asia for she pronouns. Yeah, I still have it, so it's okay. Thank you. I'm currently the engagement coordinator at Young Invincibles, New York. So I'm super excited to be here. We are a national nonprofit organization that is dedicated to elevating young adult voices in the political process and expanding economic opportunity for our generation. And we specifically work with young adults ages 18 to 34. And I see my role not only as an educator, but as someone to empower our young adults. I feel like a lot of times our young adults are not given the space. They're not given not just the space, but the opportunity to really talk about the issues that are affecting them. And I also feel like young adults are not taken seriously in these spaces when we talk about policy and we talk about policy changes. A lot of young adults feel like they're not being heard in those spaces. But I feel like my job is to empower young adults, give them the tools, give them the resources, give them the knowledge to really create change, not only on a local level, but also on a state level and also on a national level, since we are a national organization. So this is what I see my role. I'm still an advocate myself. I'm still learning, and I also recognize that. And kind of like what Melanie was saying, I am in a place of privilege to be here. I am a light-skinned Asian Latina, so I also recognize that as well.
Talking before I stop. Hi everyone, Zakia Ansari, Advocacy Director, Launch for Quality Education, she, her. I say thank you. AQE is a leading statewide advocacy group. We've been fighting for equitable funding of our public schools for a little over 2 decades now. And some good news, I know we'll talk about it a little later. We are in the last phasing of almost a 30-year battle. I am a mom of 8 and grandmother of 4. Been in education just for a little over 2 decades now. And I think I've seen my role as really working hard to end the oppression of Black and brown poor communities through educational justice. That's my lens, and that's how I move through. I think organizationally, what I think the Alliance for Quality Education is, or has been, or wanted to be seen as a place that parents and community members and educators across the board, if they care about education, they know they can come to us and trust that what we share with them is the truth, right? And so many times there's not a safe space to go to find out the truth about a lot of anything. As it pertains to education, we understand how vitally it is important to have an entity that you can actually trust to say, is this really happening? What's going on? What should we do? And also actually, like I said, to move you to action. It's not just to know that you can trust us, but it's to be a space where we can move you to action. And I think for elected officials, we want to make sure that they understand that we're a place that's a resource, but also that we activate parents and community members, and they will hold to account.
So we're missing one person. We're waiting for Naomi Pena, but she'll be here any moment. We're just gonna go right in. In the meantime, I'm gonna proceed with the questions. And again, we can like again talk among one another. sort of compare notes. So one of the things that we all know about folks here is that you're all dynamic organizers and activists and advocates. And what we saw on film were different examples of activism and advocacy. I want to just sort of pique people's imaginations here. And if you can tell me, in your own experience, whether it's been over the last 10 minutes or the last 10 years or the last 10 centuries, what is the one or two most effective campaigns or actions you've witnessed, you've been a part of when it comes to public education, and advocacy for public education in New York City? And we could popcorn style this. Everyone who feels so motivated, just jump in. And if someone wants to say, nah, that ain't right, I got another one for you. You can do that too. Again, talk among ourselves and among the audience. Who's got something in mind they want to share?
Is it working? Is it working? So, we've been pushing for smaller classes for 20 years, and last June, the state legislature did pass a law that's going to require New York City to lower class sizes in all grades. And so that was a really big victory for us. Without the help of AQB and so many of the other partners and advocates around this room, as well as so many parent organizations. In the end, the UFT came and supported the bill as well. And so it takes a tremendous amount of consensus, I think, among all the stakeholder groups to pushing a law like that through. There are also lots of people behind the scenes that help with it, who I cannot even mention publicly because they wouldn't want to be mentioned. Because Albany is, I find, a very mysterious place, and a lot of the deals go on in the back room. So in the end, you don't really know why it worked this time, and though a lot of work went into it, a lot of organizing went into it, I think a lot of luck went into it as well, because you can do all the organizing in the world, and if you don't have certain people on your side, you're just not going to make change. So that's what I would say about that. We still don't have smaller classes in New York City. There's still a lot of fighting that has to be done, and I guess we'll talk about that later in terms of the budget, in terms of getting the Try it now.
Keep trying.
So I just want to say the fight is not over. We've just begun. We need to advocate on the budget. We need to advocate on the capital plan. We need to push this administration that has no interest in doing the right thing. And we have to make sure that the money keeps flowing from the state. But again, we would never have achieved this without the work of AQB and so many of the other groups here that made it possible.
Something that I have always kind of been inspired by since the start of my advocacy is the
you got it.
Okay, back to work. Something that I'm really inspired by is the work that our CUNY Rising Alliance has done. I'm sure a couple of folks know CUNY Rising Alliance. Making sure that CUNY is free because it was free before. I don't know, it was free before, but until they started putting people of color in enrollment, that's when they started charging tuition. So I really want to shout out the CUNY Rising Alliance. We have, I think, over like 20 plus organizations, including Young Invincibles, who's a part of the organization and part of the core meetings. And they have really fought tooth and nail to make sure that CUNY is affordable and also making sure that the CUNY system, which is one of the largest public school higher education systems in the country, along with SUNY, who's on a state level, making sure that budget cuts are not being done, because currently right now the city budget is about to be cut, and we have schools, we have 25 CUNY campuses that currently don't have elevators working, right? So talking about accessibility, it's not accessible. We also have folks who are saying that the walls are crumbling in their classrooms. Like, who wants to go into a classroom where the walls are crumbling? Do you think that people are able to learn when the walls are crumbling? Like, what does that say about them? Like, are they really being taken seriously? Are they really being taken seriously? And also making sure that our faculty, our adjunct faculty, are being paid a living wage. A lot of our adjuncts, CUNY heavily relies on adjunct faculty, and that also affects quality education that our young adults deserve. And so I've seen CUNY Rising Alliance make sure that there aren't any tuition hikes, right? Because CUNY every year wants to increase tuition, even though we're still in a pandemic, which is why I'm still wearing my mask, because we have to acknowledge that we are still in a pandemic. There are still folks who are not being included in these conversations when it comes to folks who are disabled or folks who are immunocompromised as well. So I feel like CUNY Rising Alliance is a perfect example, and I definitely want to continue doing this work, and also including a lot of our young adults who come from CUNY, the CUNY system, because that is our social upward mobility for economic opportunity.
I'm looking at y'all. That's what I heard. What I was sharing before around, for us as an organization, the Alliance for Quality Education, is this 30-year battle around the campaign for physical equity, which is how we got to some classes C4E, contracts for excellence, like all these different things. And so I think it's just a powerful story of a parent, Robert Jackson, who was a school board. In 1993, he realized something's not right, something's not jiving here. Like, why the kids in my community in Washington Heights don't have the same things that we want for communities, and decided to take matters into his hands along with other parents in Washington Heights. And, you know, we could go on, but I think it's just a perfect example of someone who started there, like so many parents do, and started to be an advocate and trying to push for something to change. To actually be able to see what's different is that you often don't get, the parent doesn't often get to see it through its final stages. And so he started as a parent in 1993, he's still a parent, otherwise I'm starting over. But, you know, and then because of the organizing of our organization, where I was a parent volunteer for a number of years before I became employed, but because of that organizing of the community, in 2006 we were able to get the government to put this historical monument into public schools. So it's supposed to be a 4-year commitment. The market crashes, like that has anything to do with our kids or us. That wasn't us that crashed the market. But we spent the last 16 years or so reminding the state that they have yet to meet their commitment to the campus of physical equity. Had it not been, I believe, into a pandemic, a racial reckoning around George Floyd's murder, the weakening of Governor Cuomo's power because he couldn't keep his hands and lips to himself. I do believe that we probably would still be here fighting for CFE, but because all those things happened in this moment, it really galvanized where people couldn't deny that Black and brown and poor kids didn't have soap in their bathrooms, you know, that they didn't have nurses, that they didn't have windows that opened, they had windows that were shut and closed and hammered closed with nails, right? There was a TV show you couldn't watch that was talking about inequities that were happening in public schools and making poor Black and brown communities
senator in Robert Johnson, of actually being able to see his beginnings come to fruition. That we are actually, the budget passed with the final phase of the campaign for fiscal equity after almost 30 years. After almost 30 years of folks in this room, folks on this panel, young people who are now parents themselves, fighting to ensure the public schools across New York State, not just New York City, receive the billions of dollars they needed, right? The problem is, and I think we'll talk more about this, which is it took almost 30 years.
Hold on to the mic. So I want to go to the movies and then after that, come back to the issues at hand. I know you all have your causes that you care about very deeply, that you get up every day and you fight for. Based on what you know about the movies you just seen, what issues, now this might not be your issue, this might not be your particular crusade, but of all the issues that we heard about today in the movies, which do you think are most relevant right now to what New York City is going through at the moment? That is, I know all the issues are important, right? Whether it's literacy, whether it's charter schools, whether it's the closing of schools, class size, all those things are extremely important. But what is happening in New York City right now that you think you can learn the most from based on these movies?
Yeah, the intersectionality around, for me, and it's so relevant now and has been, are they listening to the voices of the people? Right, parents, young people, and it's not just around education, it's around everything. Our voices are not valued. We saw it across the board, Chicago students standing in the street and say, are you listening to us? And one was like, give me 5 minutes. They're like, nah, are you listening to us? Like shut it down. To the parents in the Perfect Storm. They didn't choose this. We want our school back. We want community control. They did what they wanted to do, right? And I think across the board, even in all those stories, that to me, that's a theme. And that's what's happening now. It's the same thing. Parents are saying, young people are saying, community members are saying, we need housing. Are you listening to us? We don't need our schools cut. Are you listening to us? We need our libraries. Are you listening to us? Right? That migrants and asylum seekers are people too. Are you listening to us? They deserve to be respected. And once again, our voices are not heard. They are pushed to the side. They are not worthy of being listened to. But yet we are voters. Right? And so I think for me, and you've seen that there, but just through the work that I've done, it's like listening to the people that actually are being harmed by the harmful policies. That's not necessarily on people's radar. We understand why that is, but to me, that's a really strong piece that just resonates.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I'm not thinking. I guess I'm piggybacking off of what was already said. I do think that it's not just hearing people, but creating spaces, right? Kind of going back to why I'm here and the work that I'm doing is creating these spaces where people are being heard, but also empowering them to have positions of power. Because again, these decision makers, we vote them. We vote them into power. But the problem is they're not they're not listening, and oftentimes they're not from communities that we come from, right? Low income, black and brown, right? NYCHA housing, like whatever that case is, they don't come from the communities that we come from, and that is the problem. And that is why they can't relate. They don't want to push for policies that would actually help us and that would be beneficial to us, right? And to creating these systemic changes that are so needed and we've been talking about for centuries, not just 30 years, like centuries. And really making sure that we are creating that space for people and having those tools, those resources, as I'm saying before, for people to be in those positions and really building people up and creating spaces like this, community like this, where people are able to build each other up and learn from each other. I think that's something that I definitely learned from this film, from watching this.
Thank you. Lady?
people, decision makers up on high who are not part of the community, whose kids are not necessarily going to the public schools, who are making decisions that are not based upon the best interests of the kids who they are deciding for. And so in New Orleans, there was this big push to privatize the schools and turn them into charters. In Chicago, very similar thing happened. They closed 50 schools and opened up a lot of charters instead of providing the conditions in those schools that kids need and that their own kids probably benefit from in the private schools that they attend. In New York City, we see a similar push. We've been a little bit more successful in resisting it than the parents in Chicago or the parents in New Orleans, but there was a very big push this year to add more charter schools to New York City. We already have over 200, by far the most in the state, and the governor decided that we needed more. And so even though there was great resistance among parents, among teachers, among our legislators, they did send our way another 14 zombie schools, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it has the potential of taking another $100 million or more from the DOE budget, which is already spending more than $3 billion a year on charter schools, and also taking up precious space that we need to reduce class sizes. So, you know, the mayor comes from a place where a lot of his supporters or wealthy Wall Street hedge funders who push very hard for charter schools, as well as the governor got a lot of money from them as well. And it's really not what our system needs. It's not what our children need. And if we had a truly democratic school board, we wouldn't be giving them space and allowing them to expand in the same way that we seek to be. So that's a theme I see through all of this. People are making decisions for our children who don't necessarily have the best interest in their hearts, and they do not want to have our schools run in a fully democratic way from the bottom up. Instead, it's the top down.
I really just want to kind of build on that, that schools are being managed from the top down. It's the mayor that's making all these decisions surrounding education. Or CCs or the school leadership teams, and you realize that you don't have any power in it, no voting power at all. You know, we talk about how we vote officials in. I can't vote yet. I am 16. I unfortunately can't vote. I don't have a say who goes into office. I can only hope that people vote a good person into office. But I have to deal, again, in my classroom, I have to see the budget cuts. I have to see all of that when we should be examining how can we get youth to have power in it? So how can we get youth to have a say in the PD, in the CCs, in the school leadership team, in the government? How can we have that? And it really is just making sure that they have a say, like through voting power in it. And I think that's something that we don't have to we are not the government, that mayor needs to listen to the people.
Mel, if you could take this to work over there, because or anyone can take this, but to start getting down to some brass tacks, right? If you had the ear of the city council and the mayor sitting in the room with them, one-on-one or one-on-51, and you were to be given the opportunity to make your argument for what the greatest budget priority is right now as it relates to public education, what would it be? What would that argument be? What would that budget item be? And why do you think it's so important? Why do you think it is the priority right now in 2023? You want to start, Melanie? Are you okay? Yeah. Yeah.
There's been a great deal about restorative justice being talked about. I'm aware that there was a % increase in restorative justice within the budget, but that doesn't take away from the fact that students are still being treated like criminals in their schools. I have to go through a metal detector every single day. I have to see the safety officers and not think of them as they're there for my safety, but rather they're there because I might cause trouble or someone might cause trouble with another student. So when I think about restorative justice, I really, even with the slight increase, is it enough, quite frankly, and what's going to happen with it? We need to make sure that schools, again, are going to be able to use it properly because it costs a lot of money to hire a guidance counselor. It costs a lot of money to hold mindful space. And even if there's a slight increase, I feel as though restorative justice, we need to nurture students, we need to take care of students, and we can't just treat them as though they're not the priority when they really should be.
So I have this piece of paper here, which is at the table over there as well, which is Class Size Matters, New York City Kids PAT, Cancer Parent Advisory Council, and the Alliance for Quality Education Budget Priorities for fiscal year '24. So these are what we're pushing for, and we could definitely use all of your help. The mayor and the city council should prevent any more cuts, budget cuts to the school level. As many of you may know, that they've already cut $1 billion or nearly $1 billion out of schools this year, and class sizes went up. And many schools lost really important programs like art and music and special education services. We believe the funds are available to do so. The DO is receiving almost $500 million in addition from the state next year as a result of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit. That's the last third year phase in over 3 years of about $1.3 billion extra from the state. So it makes no sense that the city wants to cut back school budgets at the same time. We know the need for school funding is greater than ever to help kids recover from the pandemic, but also to start lowering class size. Next year is the first year of the 5-year phase in. So we need that money. The schools have lost over 4,000 K-12 teachers in the last 5 years, which has had really dramatic and bad effects on our schools. We also need a more robust capital plan. This is the part where a lot of people don't sort of phase out, but a lot of our schools are overcrowded. Over 300,000 kids are overcrowded.
Yeah. Talk about it.
More than 300,000 kids are in overcrowded schools, and yet the DOE wants to cut $2.6 billion out of the capital plan and 22,000 seats, even when we need more space to lower class size. So this is a critical issue. It takes 5 years to site and build a school on average, so we will never reach the 5-year phase in, which is what the law requires if the city is successful in cutting the capital plan for schools. And what we are also pushing for is more transparency around the DOE budget. Right now, we have no idea how much schools are going to be cut next year if the mayor's plan goes through. The DOE has refused to tell us. They right now we just get this huge unit of appropriation to just general education instruction and another one for special education instruction. But we have no idea how much of that money actually comes down to the school level. So we're asking for that budget change in the way that the council gets and votes for education budget, which is really important, so that no one can be fooled again about what the actual impact is going to be at the school level. And then we're asking for more transparency around class size. That's a bit technical, but there is a reporting law that was passed in 2006, but it doesn't actually report on the actual level of class sizes at the school level, which we're going to need to know which schools are complying and which schools are not. And there are two other local laws that were passed in 2018 to require more transparency and accountability around how the city estimates about how much additional school space we need, and also helps identify sites for schools. The DOE was, the School Construction Authority, in 2018 was supposed to analyze every single empty lot in the city, whether publicly owned or privately owned, and say which ones would be possible to site schools on, and they still haven't done that to this day. So those are the things that we are pushing for, and hope that you will push for it too. As I said, a more detailed list is on the table over there, but we hope you will be pushing your city council members and the DOE to provide that kind of budget for our schools next year.
That's pretty comprehensive. Lisa? Yeah, I think that just discard just try to yell.
I think something that we work on at YI is basic needs. So I talked about PD, right, making PD free again. But along with that is making sure that our students have their basic needs being met and having those wraparound supports, having those wraparound services that when a lot of CUNY folks come from public education systems, K through 12. I went through the public education system all my life. I grew up actually in Washington Heights, and then I moved to Brooklyn for a better education opportunity, and that's how I'm in my position right now. But I think a lot of times, right, when we think about students, like college students, they think, oh, well, you're independent, like, you don't need this and that, you can do whatever, right, because you're adults. But what we don't realize is that our public education system from K through 12 has failed our young adults who go into higher education system or who won't even go into the workforce. And they don't have their basic needs. We still have folks to this day, right? We're in 2023. We're still in pandemic. I still have students who are telling me that they are food insecure. They don't have enough food at home, or they have to choose between paying their rent or buying food or buying groceries. That is unacceptable. Like, we should be having these services to our young adults, whether they're K through 12 and even our CUNY systems, right? I don't know if folks know this, but CUNY had a contract back in 2019 where they partnered up with Single Stop. And Single Stop was kind of like this one-stop shop for folks and young adults to get services when it came to their basic needs. So if you needed to apply for SNAP, if you needed to apply for housing, they had social workers on staff to help you. That's how I, in this video, was able to apply for SNAP, able to apply for housing. Because oftentimes when we want to apply for these services, there's so much jargon, and then there's so much documentation, verification that's required, that it takes months, like 6 months upwards, to even get your SNAP verified, so you can get SNAP benefits. And I feel like we need to do a better job. Our elected officials, our mayor needs to invest more in our basic needs, in making sure that folks have access to food, healthy food options. We all know that New York City, when you're living in urban areas, food deserts are common, right? So, on top of that, I also feel like we also need to invest in housing as well, and making sure that our young adults are now out in the streets, because we are in a housing crisis. We have been for a while. Why has that not changed? So that's what I would say. we need to change and make sure that our young adults have these supports, have these wraparound services, because it's 2023 and it's still unemployment.
That's a very difficult mark. So slowly I'm being able to synthesize that. I'm going to say and because I'm going to add two things. One is People's Plan is here. So if you want to know what we really are activated around, I was over there. Metro Center, the Coalition for Educational Justice is over here. We got Advocates for Children. So specifically around budget issues, we got that on lock and we know what it is. What I want to bring up, and I think two things that are really important, is to create for both the mayor and the city council is what does it look like to have an abundance narrative, not a scarcity narrative. We have yet to try for any long period of time to create opportunities across the board. That's housing, that's education, that's any issue area you want to talk about, we can talk about that. From an abundance. Everybody talks about scarcity. And any time we legislate, pass policy centered in fear, the most marginalized are the ones that get harmed the most. Right? Historically, we know that. So we know the scarcity mindset motivates some and activates some. Right? Unfortunately, it's the wrong people that activate, right? So the abundance narrative is the narrative that we are all as community members and young people and educators, we're like, we can have it all. We know we can. You know why? Because when you need that one thing like more police, you can invest $5 billion. Right? The abundance narrative tells us that you will make sure that young people who are in school, when we know facts show us that CUNY and SUNY and all these places educate the most Black and brown kids, immigrant kids, and as successful as, right? When you have an abundance narrative, then young people don't have to be at, they should be playing and having fun hanging out with their friends and not at City Hall or not on the steps somewhere burning up or in the freezing cold to demand this bare basics, right? So what's the abundance narrative? So that's one, that's for the city council and the mayor. And lastly, stop othering people. If we stop othering folks, right? We fuel the phobias, we fuel the isms that don't allow us to see each other in our full humanity, right? And so you have migrants and asylum seekers coming into a space from tragedy, harm, who knows what they experience. And instead we're othering them. And so we wonder why when kids are in school, they bully each other, right? When you're LGBTQ plus and you're looking a little different or you got your pride bracelet on, instead of leaning into that and saying, wow, what is that? And being happy and excited about that, we recoil. Because the narrative is they're other than, they don't look like me, they're not like me. And so what does it look like? And we know what it looks like because in many of our houses we do it, and in places where we work it happens, that we lean into difference. Because not one of us is the same. Right? But if we keep with this othering of folks, that's what allows us to have kids in cages and people let it happen. Right? That's what allows us to have people come from all across the travel waters and dangerous ways and come here and be chanting USA, USA. Right? Like if we know that's the narrative that's going to come. And this mayor, guess what, is fueling that. So abundance narrative and not scarcity and not austerity. And stop othering folks. Like we is a real thing. It really is.
Thank you for dropping the mic. I was asked to just talk into this mic. I don't know if it makes a difference. Probably not.
Malcolm is like, look, y'all get to just speak.
You can hear me, but it's too loud. Yeah? Okay. Let's go with that. Do I need to pass this mic? All right. So we're going to pause right now and put the mic up to you. And I already see a hand on my logo. I want to ask a favor though. In your asking your question, let me focus on asking a question as opposed to making a statement. I mean, you can sneak one in there, but ultimately, I'd like a question to come out, not a rhetorical question, but a question we really want an answer to. All right, so those are the parameters we're dealing with right now. So I already saw one hand up. Are there any other, well, I think we should go with the person who had their hand up first, but who else? So that's 1, 2 over here. Is there a third at the moment? Okay, it's all right, we'll come back. 3 over here.
Hey!
One more minute, it's not the last one.
Can I do 2 minutes? Because I actually don't have a question. Only one question. If it's just a question.
Go ahead, go ahead.
First of all, money doesn't grow on trees. That's number 1. Well, at least that's what we think. Number 2, she's 16. She can be on community boards. She can sit on the community board and give her opinion. And I think they said something about maybe we can't go to 16. She can participate somehow. Okay. Far as Bill Perkins was my mother's baby. Bill Perkins, when he was running, him and Diane Lacy, who was the judge, and Angela Toro from the east side, who was assembly in the back in the old days. My mother was that grassroots person who they came to in the projects to get somebody to campaign for them. And she campaigned for all these people, and they all got in. And my mother was loved. She formed the Secure Truth Club. And they kept trying to get me to be a part of it, but I wasn't interested. I remember Bill telling me, Crystal, my name's Crystal, for those who don't know. And Bill would tell, I was like 14 at the time. He would say, Crystal, you know, your mother's in the politics, you need to be listening. But back then, when we had childhoods, being in the park and the swings and stuff, that was all we cared about. I wasn't caring about politics. But one thing I would like to say, we talk about don't have. We talk a lot about what we ain't got. But guess what? I still look at the projects to this day, and you have the government, HUD, giving tenant associations, tenant participation activity funds, giving them millions of dollars to create programs, give it to the tenant association, to create programs with their tenants, sleepaways, all kinds of stuff, right? We got to go to TPA budget manager. Look it up. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. But guess what? The people aren't spending money. Somebody give me $1 million, the first thing I'm going to do is go shop. So we talk about disenfranchised, the poor, uneducated, just word they got from us, underutilized bodies, got all kind of crap that I'm sick of hearing about. Okay? I'm tired of what we ain't got. Because guess what? I know it don't know about the shit. We don't utilize what we got. And we folks get off. All day. We sit around and city council people, they stay in their meetings. So those city council hearings, they investigate this agency. They investigate that agency. But guess